Hello everyone and welcome to the 7th Wind of Change guide video. This time Rescue Administered SoS Estate. And this is a quest that is actually quite hard. Largely because you do it in a 4-man area. So before I started the series I kinda asked around in my guild everyone who'd done these quests which one they found the hardest. And it almost universally came down to either two specific quests that you can cheese, which they didn't know, or it came down to the 4-man area quests. There's this one, and well, there will later on be another that's also pretty rough. So as you can see, I've changed the builds around a little bit. Raza now has restoration abilities as well. It's a pretty energy intensive build, but it does work out because of Siphon Spirit. Xandra has Communing Spirits and Signet of Ghostly Might. Also a very energy intense build, but you really do need the additional body count just from having all these spirits. And here you see the biggest problem with this area. The enemies patrol a lot more than previous Winds of Change enemies, and they can easily join in a fight that would usually be against a 4-man group, and they join in and suddenly you're facing 8 enemies, and it just becomes more and more troublesome if you're over aggroing. So it went okay this time, but you will later on in this video, as you can see it's quite long, you will see me over aggro substantially and even wipe on occasion. So I've decided in this particular video, it's pretty long, but I decided to leave pretty much everything in. This includes deaths and walking back to the location where I died. I could cut this out. I'm not trying to pretend to be invincible here, but let me know. Do you want to see these things, or would you prefer I cut out if I die? I mean, for some of the earlier quests, if the beginning has gone really badly, I just, reset and started over. But, yeah, do you want me to cut out the dying? Just let me know. I don't mind keeping it in. Again, I'm not trying to pretend that I am some sort of god player who never dies. I definitely do. And these are definitely not perfect builds for this quest either. But, yeah, I can understand that it might be a bit boring watching me run back for 5 minutes or so, especially because I'm trying to do this with as few consumables as possible. Now, for this particular quest, I did indeed pop a Dream Rider, and I will pop another one later on when that one dies. They're just very useful. They have Interrupt, they have Empathy for melee characters, they have E-Search for nice damage. They are very strong summons, and it's just very helpful to bring along basically additional body count, because the enemies have strong AoEs, they have decent heal, they dish out nice single target damage from melee characters, the warriors and the assassins. So really, this is not an easy quest. This is something to be careful with. So if you have it, definitely pop a summoning stone. It doesn't have to be Dream Rider, it's just a Dream Rider is pretty powerful. Even a Mysterious Stone would be helpful, or I guess you could go for a Gaki Stone and then bring less heal in your party. And yeah, these sickened creatures, you might notice, or you might know from the base game, I guess, from just the standard, Canthan playthrough, that these guys were a joke, even in hard mode. They have nothing that's dangerous. Not so in Winds of Change. They have incredible damage. They can push out 150, maybe 200 per attack. So very strong, especially if you don't have any good party-wide protection like Aegis or Prot Spirits. And I just don't have this party space for Prot Spirits. Yeah, your quest mission here, I guess, is to save these Canthan peasants, and you can see this first one that I triggered. You trigger them once you're in, I don't know, about double aggro range ish, and then they become allies and they mustn't die. Now, as you can see, this one actually, because these enemies only do normal damage, this guy actually managed to keep himself alive. I believe they have Spirit Bond and maybe Prot Spirit, or something along those lines anyway. They have pretty decent self-protection. So this guy actually managed to stay alive while aggroing 4 of these sickened stalkers for quite a long time. So that's pretty convenient, because it can be a bit dangerous when you trigger the peasants to become killable, essentially, but you're not actually in range of the nearby groups yet, because then the enemy groups could focus on the peasants entirely and consequently kill them, and you would fail the quest. So I have most commonly failed on the second peasant when I did this quest on my Mesmer. This is actually the recording you're seeing here is the first try that went beyond a minute. So if my fight against the first group already went really poorly, I just decided to restart. Again, I'm not pretending to be some sort of god player. This is actually the first time I got this far, and it just ended up working out nicely. But there's definitely no shame in having to reset this quest and in dying to it. But yeah, I would definitely recommend taking the route I'm taking. It allows you to most of the time get to the second peasant, which for me at least was always the most problematic. Allows you to get to him without him having any aggro, basically. So it feels like the safest path to take, and also the least troublesome. But as you can see, these 4 against 4 fights are just a lot longer than if you had an 8-man party, because you need to bring so much defense and so much just general skills that don't actually do tons of damage. You end up having not too much of a straight up damage potential. You just don't have the slots for that. So you can see half my Raza is just for healing, half my Livia is just for protection, and she keeps dying, so she never really builds up that many minions. And then Xandra is largely to increase the amount of just enemy, or the amount of allies that I have by putting down more spirits, just because it distracts enemies. The Ritualists and I think the Mesmers, they can have actual real AoE, or the monks as well, I guess. But the Elementalists, which you also commonly meet here, their AoEs tend to be limited to a small amount of targets. So something like Ray of Judgment damages everything that's in its path. So anyone who's standing in it takes damage. The Elementalists actually have Invoke Lightning and Chain Lightning. And those have a limit. They hit 3 targets and then they're done. From what I recall, anyway. I know Chain Lightning does. I'm not even 100% on Invoke anymore, but I believe so. So yeah, against those, it just helps having spirits and such around, because it makes it more likely that the spirits get hit and not your party members. And yeah, in situations like these, really, really be careful and never over aggro. It's really dangerous to have more than one group aggroed at a time. It can work out depending on what exact skills the enemies have. As I said previously, not every afflicted monk has the same bar, and not every afflicted necromancer has the same bar. So it can work out if you aggro 2 groups at the same time. But I would still strongly recommend doing anything you can to avoid that to prevent that from happening, to avoid that. Yeah, and especially in smaller groups, it's the soul explosions when the afflicted die become even more troublesome, because in a smaller party configuration, a single skill or a single action can have more effect, because if you're in an 8-man party and one of your characters gets interrupted on his elite skill, that means that still 7 out of 8 people in the party still have their elite skill available or can still use it. If you're in a 4-man party, that's instead of 12.5%, suddenly 25% of your party have lost their elite skill. So it's just, it's more impactful, and a single poorly chosen skill just has more of an effect. If I did this again, I would probably change Xandra around to maybe have energy management instead of smite hex. I'm not sure, but I didn't have any hex removal otherwise. I just I kind of figured I had to bring hex removal, but on second thoughts, upon basically having finished the quest, these guys don't really have any super dangerous hexes. And here you can see, I was almost done with the first group when the second came in, but it's still not a good situation, because after a fight you ideally you want some time to recuperate, to get your health back, your energy back, to get your recharges back and such, and so you don't you don't have this happen to you. It actually ended up just working out. I mean, I died and had to go back to the very beginning, but the afflicted Mesmer actually still dies, so there is that. My Dream Rider is pretty strong. He carried pretty hard. And Livia actually survived, funnily enough. As you can see, she still has 10% morale boost. Now, you will see me spamming honeycombs quite a bit. You just don't want to be in a situation where you have death penalty and so less health, and you keep dying and accumulating more and more of it. So for this quest, I would definitely recommend bringing some party-wide DP removal. I just had honeycombs lying around anyway, so I just used those. You could also bring anything else that removes DP from the party. If you're particularly desperate, you could also bring P-stones, but I guess those shouldn't be necessary. And again, if you're very desperate, and I know this quest can cause issues, and it is quite frustrating simply because your options are so limited, it may be worthwhile to just use a concept. I almost contemplated doing it for this quest. I may be doing it for another 4-main quest coming up much later in the content. I'm not 100% yet. I guess you can also let me know if you think that would be bad. Now I see no reason to ignore a useful feature like a concept, but I know there's players who think it's sort of impure to play that way, which I don't know. I don't agree with it, but I'm trying to show you, I guess, easy ways or safe ways to do these quests. I'm trying to not just be carried by consumables, and obviously popping a concept would make this a lot easier. Maybe I'll show that at some point, just the difference that a concept makes. It's really a massive difference. And here you see I can aggro this group before the Kenthan peasant actually has aggro from them. So depending on where you come from, you might be in a situation where the peasant is actually actively involved in the fight. And against the afflicted groups, that can be pretty bad. Again, it's luck based whether they target him or you, or whether they really do much damage to him. It's kind of random. But ideally, of course, you're safest if he's not even in range of them, like it happened here. The only thing in range, I think, was a Spirit of Favorable Winds, and I think that wasn't even in proper aggro range. Yeah. So while he was triggered and active and an ally, he appeared in the ally list. He didn't have any enemies in range, so he just stayed where he was and didn't do anything, which obviously is the safest way to deal with this. Okay, now the next section is more of the sickened animals. And in this particular fight, it worked out nicely that the minion walls took most of the damage. But as I said, these guys can spam power attack, which I think I've seen it at some point did over 150 damage. They are pretty strong. So yeah, there you see 158 damage from the power attack. They are not as weak and pathetic as they were in the base game, where you could just ignore them basically. Even in hard mode, I think all they had was Primal Rage. So they took double damage, or something along those lines. They barely had any useful abilities. In Winds of Change, though, they have been buffed substantially, so it's not something you want to just, shrug off and say, okay, I'll just run past these. You also want to be careful pulling them, unless you happen to have very good melee protection. I guess if you have a tank, if you're playing as a frontliner, you could Spirit Bond and Prot Spirit yourself, and then then they'll probably be quite easy to tank, but in a caster setting like mine here, it's pretty dangerous. And again, a lot of this is kind of slow progress, because you definitely want to avoid aggroing more than one group. As you can see here, right here, I could have squeezed past these guys if I'd waited, but really I didn't want to risk that, because you just know that if you do that and you run past and try to fight the next group, then just one of your heroes or a minion or something will patrol poorly and pull the next group, and suddenly you're fighting two groups, and it's just a whole thing then. So ideally slow progress. As you can see right here, the afflicted monk just joined in. Probably either he wanted to heal one of the guys, or he aggroed onto a minion. I didn't quite notice which one it was, but already it's becoming a bit troublesome, because I was still fighting the second creatures, and then he just joined in, and consequently his entire party did. Now, it didn't end up being a wipe here, but every time Livia dies, all her minions go away, and it's just nice to have a minion wall for these quests. But there you go, 7 minions again, that's not too bad. And here again, I kind of wanted to squeeze past, but then I decided against it. It's just too risky. I would definitely recommend, unless you're possibly running a lot more consumables than me, or randomly have a much better team build, also possible, I would recommend to take this very slowly and one group at a time. They are enough trouble as it is. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you could probably use a Tengu flare, Tengu support flare, I think they're called. I just call them chicken. So yeah, you can basically use one of those 3 summons. There's also the Canthan guards, which are pretty strong. Just anything to beef up your numbers. I mean, imagine running 3 heroes. Then a single summon like the Dream Rider is already a 25% increase in just my own, I guess, body count. If I instead used a triple summon, that would be a 75% increase. So it just helps out with your damage and your defense and everything. So it's pretty nice. If you get a good spawn from the Tengu flares, those can help out immensely. Or if you're planning to use the Canthan guards, which are guaranteed to be physical damage dealers, then you can also build a team somewhat around that. So you could bring barbs, and you could make more use of Mark of Pain, because you know that those 3 summons will always be triggering those physical damage effects. Just something to be mindful about. And then, of course, there's always the option of bringing a concept, which would also make this a lot easier. But I'm trying to use few consumables, but I'm definitely not refusing to use them. But I have a good supply of them. Other players might not have, and I'm kind of trying to make these videos so that anyone who has at least some resources and a decent understanding of the game can get through, because I know some of these quests are pretty troublesome. Especially this one, as I said, is one that apparently has caused a lot of issues. Okay, now we're approaching the second time I die, but luckily the run back is not so bad. And you can see me make mistakes quite frequently where I don't really use my skills perfectly. I don't play the Necromancer very much, and so you will on occasion see me use Necrosis on a target that doesn't even have a condition or a hex, which obviously means that I just wasted the casting time and the energy and all that. It's useless casting it on an enemy that doesn't fulfill the condition. But yeah, as I said, I'm not terribly used to playing this character. I do make mistakes. It just goes to show that you don't need to be flawless to do these quests. I definitely would not be attempting the Titan quests in hard mode on this character, though. That would be ill-advised. But yeah, Winds of Change, pretty much anyone can do it. You do need some hero setup. And here you can see the negative aspect of having a spear on my ritualists. Now I gave my ritualists spear sets because I want them to not stand at the same range as my casters. It just means that AoE will not be quite as effective, and they don't really need they have no use for 40/40 sets, because most of what they use aren't spells, so 40/40 sets have no real effect there. And yeah, you can see I just died, aggro 2 groups. And again, that's because my hero tried to attack, and because of the spear ran closer than I had anticipated, and aggroed a group, and yeah, 2 groups was just 1 group too many. Again, burning off the DP so it doesn't accumulate, and then, you know, going back to the fight. And this time the Dream Rider didn't make it, so I'm just popping a new one. Dream Riders are fairly pricey, but I do Underworld a fair bit, so I get them. It's not that bad. And again, could be done with a Mysterious Summon Stone. If you're using Mysterious ones, though, you will probably have a lot of them. I myself would probably leave the area if I get a really bad one. So just join the area, pop a Mysterious, and if it's a completely crappy one, possibly rejoin the area and, you know, try again. I mean, something like the Swarm of Bees would probably be a bad choice. Anyway, we are approaching the 3rd peasant now. It's unfortunately quite a walk. There's really no way to shorten this. But yeah, we only have a few more groups to deal with, but at least it's an interesting quest. It's not just, you know, go and kill all the things. You actually have to protect some NPCs, and there seems to be more purpose to the quest, and more of a, I don't know, well thought out background, I guess. Now in normal mode, when I did this quest, I also brought Raza and Livia, but instead of Xandra, I brought Norgu. In normal mode that worked out quite nicely, because you do deal with a fair amount of physical enemies. Each group has at least 1 melee character, or melee enemy, so warrior or assassin. Most groups have more than 1, and there's also the rangers. So Norgu had the illusion build, which has made him quite strong against these melee focused characters. And then he also has some interrupts, which are obviously nice to deal with the casters. It's, I find, an altogether useful, I don't know, useful setup for normal mode, but for hard mode it doesn't really work out, or at least I haven't found it to be particularly effective. Yeah, really not much more to say. This peasant, I think it might technically be safer to approach it from the other side, but actually I've never failed on this last peasant, and I have... well, I've only done the quest 3 times in hard mode, but I failed it quite a bit more. But whenever I've gotten to the 3rd peasant, using this particular route I'm taking here, it's always worked out. So you could go kind of the long way around and go to the island where he's on from the other side. And I think that might possibly be safer, but the peasants aren't completely useless. They are not level 10, they are not insta-killed by the enemy's attacks. They can hold their own for quite a while, and more sirens outside, I'm sorry about that. But really, not much I can do about it. So yeah, you might remember the first peasant, he had full aggro of these sickened animals for quite a long time, and he was fine. Not sure if he could have held that for forever, indefinitely, but for the first part, definitely. He lasted long enough, basically. And yeah, the disadvantage of the Dream Rider is that he uses Chaos Storm, and that can be problematic because it will cause enemies to scatter from the Chaos Storm. And enemies scattering from Chaos Storm means they can run backwards into other groups, and your minions or your heroes will follow, and that can be a cause for over aggro. It hasn't happened in this particular run, but it can happen. It's not terribly likely, but of course when it happens it's really really inconvenient and just annoying when you die to something like that, when it's not really your fault and there really isn't much you could have done about it. Yeah, this has been the second to last group. I would always recommend not running past these leftover spirits there. Wait for your heroes to deal with them, and then move on. It just helps being at least almost full energy when you tackle a new group in this area. And again, one of your characters not being able to do much because of low energy is it's more of an issue in low party size areas. As you can see, last fight here, if you went at this from the other side, then the peasant would never actually have aggro. And again, it would be like the second peasant was in this run, it would be completely safe. But as you can also see, the peasants are monks, they can sort of hold their own for a bit, and yeah, he did have a bit of aggro, but it wasn't a complete disaster. Okay, well, that's pretty much the end of this quest. I'm just wiping this last enemy. And yeah, I know it took a long time. I thank you for watching, and I guess best of luck when you tackle this quest. It is a toughie, so